Well, there's a big decision that is confronting this country when it comes to our roads. It is privatizing the roads, the toll regime. We want to break it down, do some analysis of it, what we've learned from other parts of the continent where this initiative and this approach to building roads is already being done, and ask the question, what can we learn from those other countries as we set off on this journey to do what the finance minister announced yesterday that we are going to start doing now, where we're going to get a private sector to get into building roads and they have to make their monies back. There are advantages and disadvantages. Other African countries have tried it. We're going to look into what they've done, what the criticisms have been, what lessons are there for us. So a very thorough discussion tonight. Let's start with some of the work we've done ourselves here to try and learn a bit more about what this could mean for us. One of the first things that we want to start with is the finance minister's own 2022 budget announcement, which is a very fascinating one indeed. We've had tolling on our roads for decades. He then goes to Parliament and does his announcement that tolls have been zero rated. Well, we use the word abolished, but technically hasn't been, because the law that gives birth and empowers the state to charge and levy the tolls is still in place, right? I mean, so what it is that it hasn't really been abolished. And this, by the way, is 2021, not 2022. That's when he went to Parliament and made an announcement. And I was explaining that because the law still exists, any government in the future can go back and reintroduce the tolls. It is, I believe, under the same circumstance that he now comes back to the mid-year budget review. This is the 2022, just yesterday, on Monday, when he went to Parliament and makes the announcement that all roads of this nature will be tolled. What roads is he talking about? Roads under the gift-led public-private partnership will be tolled. He can say that because the law still exists. And so if the law exists, they can impose that levy still. They didn't abolish tolls, they simply zero-rated it, which they have the power to do if they go to Parliament and get parliamentary approval. So that is the announcement yesterday, as we saw. And they make the example, to be more specific, of the Accra-Tema motorway. And that's a very interesting example that he cited, possibly one of the busiest roads you can find in Ghana. What we're going to do tonight is to quantify for us how many roads, how many cars use the motorway in a day, and then you begin to appreciate why that road will be pretty attractive to the private sector investor. Okay, so we talk about GIF here. That's a vehicle that the finance minister announced yesterday Ghana government was going to use for this. What is it? They've done a very good job. The Ghana Investment Infrastructure Fund is a permanent investment vehicle established by the government of Ghana with 325 million anchor equity to act as a catalyst. And the government created this vehicle to leverage the private sector funds into infrastructure assets. It's very, very expensive. One of the most expensive things any government can do is to invest in infrastructure. And so they created this to try and get the private sector involved in building. But private sector will jump at anything that has good returns. And so if you look at the works that they've done in the past, it has a very good record. And this is the Terminal 3 at the Kotoka International Airport. And if you ask anybody, this 30 million investment is paying back, right? It's paying back. So it's not one of those social investment that you pump money in that doesn't necessarily directly pay for itself. The Kotoka International Airport is paying back that debt. And the private sector like that sort of arrangement. That's not the only thing they've done. They've done the new multi-product oil jetty capable of receiving vessels of up to 50,000 DWT, which is important. Again, you have the 58 million new container handling terminal, multi-purpose terminal within the existing Takoradi port. And that is another important investment that will be generating revenue for whichever private sector decides to pump money into to partner government to do this. And you have the Turbo Power, 30 million, investment. That's the first phase of the 31 megawatts e-power plant to be located at the Turbo. It converts flared gas into electricity. Again, this will be very lucrative. And so the private sector will love to put in, and that's why. So that's their portfolio, things that they put their money in. The point I want to make with this is that the GIF is a good vehicle. They have a track record of making investments such as this, and so they can partner the private sector to construct the Tema motorway. So that's a very important thing just to establish that yes, it's a vehicle that is there, it's been established, and it's already, has the wherewithal to do this. So one of the things we want to do, as I said at the beginning, is this approach is not new. Others on the continent have done it. Elsewhere, it's pretty commonplace, where government is no longer in the business of building roads themselves with the taxpayers' funds directly. They simply get the private sector to do it because you can tow it and then you can make money over time, right? And it makes sense why Ghana will be thinking that this is the best way to go now, because roads are a major part of an economy, and it forms one of the key things that voters will look at when they are going to the polls. You think a voter will care who builds the road? Government will take credit for it. If the private sector built it, government will take credit for it. So why should government go and take all these very expensive loans at a time when we don't have access to the markets and build the road when they can get the private sector to simply do it? The problem, though, is the private sector guy will want his money back. How? Let's go to Kenya. Kenya has a very fascinating, road that was built by the Chinese, and it's called the Nairobi Expressway. Anybody who's been to Kenya and those who live there will tell you it is a very controversial thing that the government of Uhuru Kenyatta decided to do, but they've done it and it's working. It's not without its critics, right? So what did they do? They got a China Road and Bridge Corporation to fund this, and huge amounts of money, $550 million. That's more than $500 million. That's a lot of money. And if you've been to Kenya, Nairobi, you probably understand what I mean. This connects the Nairobi airport all the way into town. I mean, it stretches 27.1 kilometers. That's quite a stretch there. And it cost this much. So that's a lot of money they built. But the thing about this is they didn't just build the expressway. I'll show you a picture, a very fascinating picture. They built the expressway above, and then beside it and underneath it is ordinary lanes that are not towed, right? They had to make their money back. So how are they making their monies back? They were making their monies back through tolls. And this is what they were charging. Between 8 equivalent, okay, of course it's in shillings in Kenya, but they charge an equivalent of 8 CD 24 pesos to access it. Between that and 123 cedis. That's a lot. That's a lot of money. Consider that we're paying tolls. When they abolished the tolls, it was 1 cedi. My car was paying 1 cedi. If you had a saloon car, you're paying 50 pesos. So think about it. In Kenya, they were paying this. And those who live there say, if on average now, you pay $1.50 now on average. So this is slightly on this side of it. $1.50. That is around 12 cedis. So assuming that we get the Tema motorway built, and you're using current economics and the rates of interest rates and the depreciation of the cedi, etc., even if you're paying 15 cedi thereabout, will you pay 15 cedis in, 15 cedis out on the Tema motorway that comes down to 30 cedis just to, in and out using the Tema motorway? Are you prepared to pay that if the road is in absolute pristine condition? What the Tema motorway extension will do is to have multi-lanes, both on the left and right, clear median, so the accidents will be reduced, but fantastic lane. You can drive and speed as all you want, and it is sweet. Will you spend that equivalent, this amount that Kenyans are paying, And then you have the purpose. It's depending, and you are paying, there's a range, you're paying this depending on the vehicle type and distance, cutting down traffic from 3 hours, to 20 minutes. That's a lot of time saved. And I saw somebody do analysis of this Kenya-Nairobi expressway with analysis of if you have 3 hours, right? But if it comes to 20 minutes, consider the fuel. I'm talking about the amount you're paying. And many will say, but this is too expensive, right? This is too expensive. Ghanaians will not want to pay this amount because it's simply too expensive. This year, it's too expensive. Assuming it's even the what the Kenyans pay now, which is around $1.50, just 12 cedis thereabout. And then you pay the same out, almost 30 cedis. Too expensive. But if you consider that your fuel cost is going to be, factored into this in the current time when fuel is very expensive, right? That will save you a lot if you think about it. Say you work in Tema and motorways, you pay a lot, by the way. You have to do your own calculations. So that is one of the things you're doing for you, trying to help you appreciate what this will mean once it's finally delivered. Because that's what is happening in Kenya, by the way. So this is positive. The environmental impact is good because you're losing less time. The stress on yourself, you're cutting down the maintenance, is your vehicle maintenance. In the long term, you possibly will gain, right? So that is Kenya. That is the expressway there that I wanted to show you. In Kenya. That's the expressway there in Kenya. Now, one of the things that I want you to notice about this, right? I want you to notice about this is look here, look underneath here, right? This is the expressway, and the road above is the one that is tolled, right? And then they have this for, if you don't want to pay for the expressway, which is quite costly for the average, Kenyan, you can choose to use this. That's where the traffic is. So they created an incentive to use the expressway. And they build both. They build what is here, they probably improved the normal roads, and then build this afresh. So you can choose to use the traffic prone one. You pay nothing, but you sit in traffic for hours, right? You pay more fuel, you maintain your vehicle, you are late, productivity is going to be affected, or you choose to pay your $1.50, a lot of money, to use the expressway. And it's cut down traffic from 3 hours to 20 minutes. You want to sit there for 3 hours? So that is what they've done. But there was criticism in Kenya because the view in Kenya was that what they had done in essence is to create one road for the rich, and one road for the poor. And so it became very controversial. And they said, well, look at the expressway. One car on top of it. You have thousands of cars crammed here. Why are you creating a class system when it comes to the roads? I wonder what our approach is going to be. Are we going to have one that is tolled and one that is not, so people have a choice? So, that is a very interesting concept that Kenyans deploy. But that is what happens in Kenya. You either use here, pay nothing, stay in traffic, or use the expressway. That's a very interesting concept. I guess this is all part of the conversation towards implementing. So that's a Kenyan example. And then we also went to Senegal, where you have a very interesting one too. Not like the Kenyans. They decided to go to a private investor, and the private investor invested $173 million to build the 17 kilometer. By the way, the Accra-Tema motorway, according to the highways, the Ministry of Roads and Highways, is 19.5 kilometers, if I'm not mistaken. So this is shorter than that. And it cost us 173 million. It cost the Senegalese 173 million. But here's another thing that we need to pay attention to. The private sector guy who's putting the money in will have to make their money back over a period. In Senegal, it was 25 years. So they will toll the road for 25 years in Senegal, make all their monies back before the road returns back to the state. During that period, they will charge the toll, as I've explained in the case of Kenya, a lot of money to make their monies back, right? But here, benefit, cutting down traffic time 2 hours to less than 30 minutes. Just imagine Accra Kumasi, 255, 300 kilometer stretch. We do it 5 hours, 4 hours. I mean, if you're even doing 100 kilometers an hour, that should, take you 2 hours, 50 minutes to do. But it takes us 4 hours to do. Why? The road is terrible. And you drive, you have to be careful, the accidents, all those things. If somebody builds that and says, I'm going to charge you 30 cedis to use it, 30 cedis back, 60 cedis, would you pay? You are going to avoid accidents. Your life is safe. Fuel, done. Road is sweet. It's all 2 lanes or 3 lanes on each side. Will you pay for that? And he says, I'm going to do this. You're going to pay this for 25 years. Think about that. Now, the World Bank did a study on this approach. And they came up with the costs and the benefits. They came up with the advantage and disadvantage. One of the key advantages found is zero cost to the government. Zero cost to the government. Government doesn't pay anything. We go in and pay. I don't know what our approach is. I hear the finance minister say possibly our approach will include government bearing part of the cost, because a public-private partnership. I don't know what that approach is going to be exactly, but one of the key advantages is that government pays zero. This is according to the World Bank. But here is the challenge. The private sector guy is going to be doing this based on the traffic volumes. And the World Bank is warning that the high capital construction costs mean that the projections of traffic volumes often considered an insufficient revenue stream to meet debt service and equity return for sponsors. So they possibly are looking at it, do you have enough traffic volumes? And often it takes longer, 25 years in the case of Senegal, to make the money back. Is it too long for the investor? And that's one of the things they are letting us to. Government has fiscal space to fund other projects. Of course, if government is not putting all this money into building roads and the money is available to do free SHS and other things. So that's a benefit. The negative is very long concession period. In Senegal's case, it is 25 years. We have to wait 25. The private guy will tax and toll it, and they can increase the toll, of course, because it's private. If the inflation is coming in, exchange rate is coming in, they'll say, well, we need to increase it to cover the cost over time. And they'll have, it depends on the kind of agreement we sign. And that's one of the sticky points too. This is not straightforward. In every place they've done this, there's always controversy. Are we going to do 10 years, 15, 20, or in the case of Senegal, 25 years? Think about that. That's a long time indeed. What World Bank says, it is one of the disadvantages, very long concession periods indeed. Reluctance by investors to become involved. Costs will be higher to reflect higher risks. Of course, the risk there, I'm going to make my money back, is too long. A lot of things, factors that you can immediately quantify, and so they'll put it in their cost. Potential consumer resistance to paying for road use. And that was the key problem that the Kenyans have with the expressway. There was a huge controversy over paying what I told you earlier, $1.50 or so, that range there, because people said it's too much. Why should we pay that much to use a road, right? So that's the main challenge you see. Then you start thinking about what the monies I've mentioned and what we learned from Kenya and elsewhere. That is the key challenge that government will face. Well, the private guy will insist, give me realistic tolls so I can build the road for you. What would government agree to? And will you agree to that when it comes down to it? So a bit more of the background to this. Where are we coming from? Government has abolished tolls and we are losing money. We are doing this because we're in a tight corner. Government can no longer finance the roads, and so the private sector guys should do it. But whilst we say we don't have money, so private sector guys should come in, we are losing 72 million that we used to get from the 38 toll stations right now. Since we abolished the tolls, well, we zero rated the tolls. It's been 252 days, and that is since November 2021. And in that period, we have lost 49.3 million so far. Do you know how much this could do in repairing some of the roads, asphalting them, etc.? It could do some work for us, right? So that's how much we've lost so far. And as we know, there are people who say their employment has been affected. About 744 toll workers have lost their jobs. And by the way, let me tell you something about what happens in Senegal and Kenya. When they do these roads, they're not going to have human beings sitting there and collecting the tolls. Forget it. The private sector guy wouldn't do that. It's going to be mechanized and digitized. You buy your tag, you insert it, or they fix it to the screen of your vehicle, and when you're passing, the gauge reads it automatically, then the gates are open for you and you go. Nobody's sitting there to collect. You've already paid and it's immediately deducted. So no human interaction there. And so all these individuals who personally may think we may get our jobs back, it is not happening. They may have one lane where, you know, those who want to pay manual might go because people may not necessarily have bought into this. So you can have an option. And that there you have a long queue. So that will be a disincentive. So majority of people will go and get this. Accra to Motorway is a very busy road, right? So as far as jobs concerned, it's not an advantage because it's automated. It's automated. So forget about it. Maybe GIF may employ people or the private company. In Kenya, they have a whole company that has been set up to run this. So maybe they may employ people, but not to run the toll booth. So this will change. We're not going to have about 281 persons with disabilities. Unfortunately, what the government plans to do, it will not employ people to collect tolls. So don't bang on that. So that is what we know so far. It is a big decision. Controversial one is proving in Kenya and in Senegal. But if you ask those who did it, and some of the Kenyans, they like it. They like the fact that you can cut the journey time to 20 minutes, something you spend 3 hours doing. If you can afford, use it. But can the Ghanaian afford it? Big question we are asking when my guests join me here on PM Express after this break. Stay with me.